Well, greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered, and you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. Here I am with the tree that survived Christmas. Maybe that's how you feel about 2021, that you're the tree that survived 2021. But anyways, this tree didn't get chopped down, didn't get eaten by deers. This tree is a survivor, as are you. What we're talking about today is in 2 Kings chapter 4, and you know that Elisha announced to the woman that she was going to give birth to a son, and sure enough she did. And then her son somehow tragically died, and she went to Elisha and called Elisha and brought Elisha back to her house, and Elisha crawled over the son, prayed over him, and the son was restored to life and given back to his mom. And so we talked about that in terms of futures, in terms of receiving a future, in terms of losing a future, and then a future restored. Well, the next story isn't so much about gaining a future as it is about sustaining life. That Elisha is with the company of the prophets, and they're hungry, and so Elijah gives them instructions to make some stew. Well, one of them goes out and finds a wild vine, doesn't really know what the vine is or what's growing on it, but it has gourds on it, and so he brings the gourds back, slices them up, puts them in the stew. Nobody really knows what it is, and they start to serve the stew, and they all start to cry out, "There's death in the pot," and they can't eat it. And so they ask Elisha what to do, and Elisha says, mix some flour in with it. And so they add flour to it, and now all of a sudden you can eat the stew, that it's good, that life is sustained. And so just thinking about wild gourds and wild vines and not knowing what it is, I imagine at some level this became symbolic for false teaching, bad teaching, new teaching that's no good. And you start to practice or believe or buy into that kind of false teaching or that false narrative maybe, and all of a sudden you discover it's deadly and there's death in the pot. What do? Well, you add flour, you add truth, you add good teaching, and rather than it being like a salad where it's just kind of mixed and you have the two together, somehow the flour transforms the stew, so that the stew is edible and it's life-giving once again. And so just thinking about that, that's the word. That there's so much false teaching around us, so many narratives that are really kind of deadly, if you will. And it's easy to buy into that stuff because all of it, they sell it as life-giving. And yet when you begin to buy it, you begin to practice it, you begin to live it, all of a sudden you realize there's death in the pot. What do? We need the Word. We need Christ. We need His Lordship and His way. And so we begin to add that into our lives, and it begins to transform us. And all of a sudden we discover that we're actually coming to life. And it's not so much that all of a sudden what was deadly isn't so deadly. No, it's still false teaching. It's still deadly. But rather the truth prevails. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't understand it, but the darkness cannot overcome it either. And so as we kind of close out this year and we think about the new year, my prayer for you, my prayer for me is that we'd grow more deeply and deeply into the Word, that the Word would be in us, transforming us through Christ and His Spirit, and that we would discover that we are more and more alive. That instead of death in the pot, that there's life in us. Well, God bless. Have a great day. Finish this year strong. You're the tree that survived Christmas, and Happy New Year. God bless.